What the Sam Hill's going on here?
The Rewatch Podcast presents the Lois and Clark Rewatch, dedicated to the series Lois and Clark, The New Adventures of Superman on ABC. Join us each week as we investigate the origins of the Man of Steel and uncover crime in Metropolis. Send your feedback to the Rewatch Podcast at gmail.com. Join us on Facebook at facebook.com/Rewatch Podcast or follow us on Twitter at RewatchPod.
Oh, hey! Let's get back to it.
And welcome back to the Rewatch Podcast and our Lois and Clark Rewatch. I'm Cory.
And I'm to be continued.
Dun, dun, dun.
I was so taken back, like when they said to be continued. I was like, no! What do you mean to be continued? It threw me off because we haven't seen one of those.
You do know what that means, though. Next week, we're going to get Last Week on Lois and Clark.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I know. It was just shocking to me because we're so used to in this like anything in this day and age just binge watching one right after another. But like I can't really do that with Lois and Clark because if I watch the next episode before we talk about the previous episode, I'll forget things and I'll mix things up. So I can only watch those two episodes every week, and I'm like, I want to see what happens.
Well, that's what we get.
Yes.
Okay. Well, thank you for joining us, everyone. We're here discussing 2 more episodes of Lois and Clark, and this week's headline reads, Prank Luck. And we are discussing the return of the prankster and Lucky Leon. So let's get straight into it. Our first episode discussion is Return of the Prankster, written by Grant Rosenberg and directed by, wait for it, I've come prepared this week.
Oh.
I have a nice little name translator, who will speak it back for me. And now I'll know how to say this. So let's have a listen.
Philip Sgriccia.
Philip Sgriccia.
Oh, nice.
You're welcome, Philip. And this originally aired on February 26th of 1995.
Lois, where have you been? I've been trying to get a hold of you. You won't believe this. The prankster broke out of jail.
I know. Griffin and his beady-eyed friend were waiting for me when I got home.
They were in your apartment?
They must have been looking for something. The place was a mess. Nothing was missing.
Are you all right?
Yeah, I guess so.
Chief! Yeah. Chief, you better take a look at this.
What is this?
It was the weirdest thing. I walked into my apartment and there was this intense yellow light.
And you don't remember a thing that happened after that?
How did you know?
The same thing happened at the state penitentiary. That's how Griffin and Victor broke out of jail. They froze a guard in the laundry room and they left him in his underwear in a dryer.
What is with me and people breaking into my apartment and flashing lights in my eyes?
Well, Lois, this doesn't bode well for your interview with the president.
Why?
Well, the White House probably won't be too excited about exposing the president to the prankster.
Clark, the president is coming to Metropolis to present the city with an award for the lowest crime rate in America. I think it would be embarrassing for him to cancel his trip because there's one criminal loose in the street.
Now, Lois, I know you're the only reporter to get an interview with the president, and I'm proud of you. But I think this has got to be the White House's call.
But Perry...
Lois, it is the president of the United States.
When Lois returns home to discover her apartment ransacked, she finds herself frozen yet again, but this time by her old nemesis, the prankster, with his henchman Victor in tow. The deadly duo went to Lois Lane's apartment to try and find information on Superman that would allow them to beat him, allowing them free reign over the city. Meanwhile, a recovered Lois receives the news that her interview with the visiting president of the United States has been cut down to just 5 minutes, allowing her time enough for just one question, all due to the prankster causing problems around Metropolis, most notably the takeover of the Layton Power Station, allowing him to cause minor havoc around town. Lois goes to the power station to find the prankster, but is kidnapped and used as bait to lure Superman there, with the villain using his freeze ray on the Man of Steel, which fortunately has no effect. The two get away, however, as Superman rushes off to save Lois from the exploding boiler the prankster left. After the prankster raids the Daily Planet for information and freezes them all, leaving Lois and Jimmy in compromising situations, Lois and Clark go to Professor Hamilton, and he deduces that the prankster must be wearing something over his eyes to prevent being affected by the freeze ray, and gets to work on a version for Superman to wear. While the prankster tries to freeze the president's motorcade, all the civilians and Secret Service agents, Superman appears with the contacts intact, now invulnerable to the prankster's freeze weapon, and takes down the prankster and pals quickly.
Ooh.
Victor. Victor, what are you doing?
Oh,
You sound like a pervert at a magazine stand. What did I ask you to do?
Look up information about Superman?
That's right. And are you looking up information about Superman?
Not exactly.
I see. Well, Victor, what exactly are you doing?
Well, I found this file on Lois Lane's computer, and it looks like she's writing some kind of novel. It's a story about this female reporter who meets this guy from outer space, and it's really very good. It's got a lot of that stuff in it, you know. That was the last file. Mm-hmm. I couldn't find anything else.
Well, I found something.
You did what?
Yeah, well, there's a whole subdirectory on Lois Lane's C drive about Superman. Fortunately, most of it's just worthless. Except for this. Now, it seems about 2 months ago, our friend Superman was rendered temporarily... What's this word?
Inflicted with occipital opacity.
What does that mean?
Couldn't see.
Couldn't see. Couldn't see? He couldn't see because of a special light beam developed by a certain Dr. Faraday. And, she's got all the unprintable details about it right in here. All we have to do is make the light beam shorter.
Oh.
All right, so let's get into the investigation.
All right, so now this first bit here I found on the Lois and Clark wiki, which was kind of interesting. You know the scene where Griffin's father goes in as a painter to gain access to the light and power station? Mm-hmm. Well, apparently this is a duplication, an homage to a scene that actor, the actor's name is Harold Gould, it's a homage to a scene that guy played in the movie The Sting 20 years earlier, in which his character in that movie pretended to be a painter in order to gain access to a telegraph office. I'm
Interesting.
like, that's cool. Yeah, deep cut.
I guess the actor was already cast from the previous episode, so...
Exactly, yeah.
It makes sense that they would maybe write an homage to him.
Yeah, I think that was pretty cool that they did that. Now, when the prankster starts fooling around with the power in the station there was supposed to be in the script a shot of Superman rescuing a plane at that point. I assume budget reasons is why they couldn't do that shot. Let's see, when Lois Clark and Bobby Big Mouth are eating, there's an exchange where Lois says she expects Bobby would probably ask the president about his favorite dessert or something, and Bobby says, oh, no, I wouldn't ask that. I'd ask him, what the heck are hominy grits? Okay.
What?
Yeah, and then Lois ponders, I guess, in that scene, asking the president what kind of tree he would like. It was very weird, just very random. Like, why would he ask him what the heck are hominy grits, you know?
I don't even know what that is.
All I know is that grits are a southern type food, and I've had them before. Like, they've had them in restaurants, and I don't know, I'm just not a big fan of them. They're kind of like, I don't want to get in trouble with the listeners from the South, but they kind of remind me of like a blandish type potato or something like that. It's that type of feel, the texture or something. So I'm not a fan, but some people are, you know, huge fans. Like grits are just part of the menu, you know, like naturally.
Right.
So that's, I mean, I guess he's a food guy. So yeah, I guess he'd be into that, but I don't know. Why ask him what are they? You know?
Well, if anybody out there knows, feel free to shoot us an email.
Exactly. So then, yeah, and then Lois asking the president what kind of tree he'd like. I mean, I guess that's no better than asking what position he would play on a baseball team. And finally, in the script, when Griffin and Victor open the limousine, they find Superman there. There's supposed to be a joke where Superman says, I say, do you have any Grey Poupon? You know, referencing the Grey Poupon commercials.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
I believe Wayne's World already did that joke.
This is true. This is true.
Come on, we got the president to kidnap. Yeah, there she is, Lois Lane. Just as frozen as she can be. Too bad she's not awake to see my greatest triumph.
Well, maybe we could take her with us and I could explain it to her later.
Victor, you did good this time, so I'm gonna let you have her. I'm gonna let you have her.
Oh, thank you so much.
Business before pleasure. And that's a lovely face. Now look, here's what I'd like you to do. Just help me carry the president to the van.
Superman!
Yes, I am. Sorry to ruin your plans, Griffin, but the president is safely tucked away, just like you're gonna be.
But how?
Look deep into my eyes.
Contacts.
I'm sorry, but that is really not fair.
Neither is this. Just that one good prank deserved another.
Okay, well, let's get into the main story here. And the lead, that pesky prankster.
I like it.
Okay, so the prankster and Victor, of course, Bronson Pinchot returning as the prankster, they're just hanging out in Lois's apartment.
Yep.
And they've got themselves a freeze ray that looks like it's built into a Polaroid camera.
Yes.
They freeze Lois, and they've been looking around her apartment for something, but they can't find anything, so they just snap a Polaroid and leave her there.
Doesn't this seem to be like a recurring thing for Lois lately? Getting frozen, you know?
Getting light shone in her eyes.
Yeah.
Right there in her apartment.
Yeah.
So she goes to the planet, and Clark's already investigating the escape of the prankster and Victor. And further, this is jeopardizing Lois's upcoming interview with the president. I mean, this was an interesting thing to throw in there. The fact that she's like the only reporter in the whole country that has been able to get an interview with the president.
Right. I guess it shows that the Daily Planet is like, you know, a highly renowned, like it's probably like the Wall Street Journal or the New York Times would be, you know, in the real world. So they can get that access.
It's funny though, because you think about it today, and like you've got Obama, you know, going on Jimmy Fallon and showing up on podcasts, and
Yeah, exactly.
I think he's got his own Twitter and everything. So
Like, I don't know, did that happen? Like, I don't think that happened back in the day, like back in the 90s. Like, I don't think, you know, presidents would go on to those type of shows back then. Did they? I don't remember.
I don't think so. I mean,
Yeah, I don't remember.
let alone, you know, Joe Blow and his podcast inviting the president around to your garage.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, so it's, you know, in that respect, it's a little quaint, but yeah, I guess they're just trying to show here that like the president's doing this tour, he's in Metropolis, and Lois has managed to get an interview, which is big considering that the president's not giving any interviews to anybody.
Exactly.
But, you know, it's going to play out that because of Griffin and Victor sort of mucking around in the city, that she can only get 5 minutes, enough time to ask a single question, pretty much. So throughout the whole episode, she's just asking everybody, if you could ask the president one question, what would you ask them? I don't know, she gets some she gets some weird answers too.
Yeah, she does.
What people want to ask the president. And I don't know, if I had one question to ask the president, I have no idea what I would ask.
I would probably do what Professor Hamilton did, ask about aliens, you know?
Yeah.
Like, why are we covering this up? I mean, come on, really? Do we have to?
That would be a good one.
Yeah. I thought that was a good one. I mean, it's probably not what the newspaper would want to print if I was working for them, but still, I'm like, come on, why not?
Hasn't Hillary promised to release all that info if she's president?
Oh, has she really?
I heard that somewhere.
Well, I guess that's another good point there then. I'll have to consider. No, I'm just kidding. Oh, it's messy over here in the States.
Yeah. Hey, we're Australia, man. We just hang back down here. We'll just
Exactly.
leave you guys to your own devices.
I know, you're like, those idiots.
Okay, so Griffin and Victor have this plan to upgrade the freeze machine that they've created, and they're going to kidnap the president with it. You know, I think we were saying this last time about the prankster, was that sure, he comes up with these goofy plans, and we've seen villains throughout the show who have had really goofy plans, but because it's the prankster, it works. I kind of like this, you know, he's got no other thing he wants to do except screw around with Lois and try to kidnap the president for whatever reason.
Yeah, I know. It's like he wants to ransom the president, which I don't know how that's going to go. You know, it's like, I don't think they don't, like they say, they don't negotiate with terrorists and all that. I don't know. I guess it's okay. I'm just like, this one and the next episode, just kind of like, the villains, I'm just kind of like, after seeing Lex Luthor again, I'm just kind of let down by the other villains. I'm just like, well, whatever. I mean, you know, like Lex goes after Lois. He has his personal reasons, and I guess the prankster kind of does, but it just doesn't live it up to me. His plan and everything. I'm like, all right, sure, why not?
I don't know. I go with it because he has this like love-hate relationship with her. You know, she put him away that first time, and he was mucking around with her. Now she's put him in prison for a second time. He's escaped, but he's still like, he's not trying to kill her or anything. He's just like really dicking with her.
Right. Yeah, that's true. I just don't get, like, why would criminals even try in this world with a guy like Superman? Like, they're just so arrogant that they think they can take him down or get away with it. Like, I would not be a good criminal because I'd be like, I'm not going to do anything because that guy is super strength, super speed. He'd stop us in a second. I'm not even going to take the chance.
Big on Team Superman rather than Team Supervillain.
Exactly. Exactly.
And they try to go with some techno babble here. I don't know if this is a real thing, but in order to upgrade the freeze ray Polaroid camera, they need to get a micro step-up transformer, quote unquote, from the Department of Light and Power.
Yes.
So, I don't know. This could very well be a real thing.
I guess. I don't know. I went with it. I'm like, okay, they need this part.
Yeah. But pretty much it's just boosting the ability. Because I guess at the moment they can sort of freeze them for a little bit. But I think he says, like, if I have this thing, then I can choose to freeze them for a minute, 10 minutes, an hour, a day, whatever. So his father sort of gets involved here as well, which I don't know if that was necessary or not. Like, his father really doesn't do anything except help them break into that thing, and then later he's just sitting in the van the whole time.
Yeah, and it's the same thing like in the previous episode too. He was there to sort of lead, drop some information to lead them to where the prankster was, but he doesn't. We don't know if the father got arrested at the end of the last episode. So he was not part of it, maybe. He was not in prison.
I think it ended with Jimmy saying something about the father, like how would the father know something, and then they were going to go off to call the police about it. But yeah, we never really heard any more about that.
Right, right.
So yeah, who knows? So the prankster's there, and he's messing around with all the power because he's at the Department of Light and Power. And, of course, Clark needs to go and be Superman. So he's like, I better get to the airport to make sure everything's okay over there.
Yes.
And Lois just decides, well, I'm just going to go to the Department of Light and Power, even though she knows exactly that is where the prankster is.
Like, what's she going to do? Like, is she hoping to just take him down by herself? Because that's kind of silly.
I know, it was weird, because she calls up the Department of Light and Power, and she gets put on hold, and she's sitting there for about, 20 seconds, and she's just like, to hell with this, I'm just going to go over there.
Exactly.
And I was like, seriously? He's over there. I did like the effect, though, when he wrote, "Hi, Lois," in the building windows.
I know, but I was thinking, like, how can he do that? Like, how does he know? Because he's all the way over there, how does he know exactly which windows to activate to do the high-lows? It's a good effect, but I was just like, well, technically, how did he do that? He's just that smart, I suppose.
I know. It's the logistics of it all. How would he know? Yeah. Suspension of disbelief.
Yeah, it's very comic bookish. It's a very comic bookish episode.
Yeah, it's true. So, of course, he captures Lois so he can draw in Superman because he wants to test his freeze weapon again. But it doesn't work. But, I don't know. I kind of thought it was cool that he sort of, he captures Lois. And sure, it's to draw in Superman, but then it's also to draw him away. So since his freeze weapon doesn't work, well, you have to go and save Lois and I can get out of here. So he is still sort of like, he's thinking ahead at least.
I don't really have a problem with it because I'm okay and I accept it. But I was reading the review of it, and they had mentioned that it's just silly that Superman cannot rescue Lois and capture Griffin and Victor at the same time because he has super speed. He could go ahead and just tie them up real quick and then go rescue Lois, or vice versa, whatever, because it just takes a split instant. But see, that's the problem with having like normal criminals and things in these episodes. Like, he's so overpowered compared to them. He could technically like just end the episode in 5 minutes. It could be done just like that. But you have to sort of you have to stretch it out for the whole 45. So they have to come up with these ways of like, oh, he has to save her or him. You can't do both. When technically he probably could, like in the comics, it would just be a natural thing. That's why when I see the villains, like when Lex Luthor comes back like that, it's a different type of saving because he can't just beat up Lex to solve the problem because he has so many other things going, behind the scenes, and the way and the threats that he presents are not just like simple, like catch him and the problem is over threats,
Yeah, and at the same time, they always give him like just a throwaway line, like, "Hey, what happened to the prankster? Oh, he got away."
Yeah, yeah.
And you're just like, okay, thanks for explaining that.
Exactly.
It turns out that, like, Griffin was originally at Lois's place to get information on Superman, I guess.
Yeah.
And he's actually managed to get the information from Lois's work computer. And what he finds actually links back to the episode The Eyes Have It, where Superman was rendered blind. And with that information, he knows how he can adjust his freeze ray Polaroid to work on Superman. So he causes, like, even more stuff to happen. More shenanigans are going on. Because he goes to the Daily Planet and just freezes everybody. He also endangers a mother and a baby. I guess Clark and Superman need to be out of the Daily Planet at the time he shows up there to freeze everybody. So he freezes this mother and a baby with this hanging piano over the top. So Superman's dealing with that. And at the planet, he's frozen everybody and sort of positioned Lois all sexy, seductive like, right?
This whole scene here in the Daily Planet. Now, this is something that iReactions had noted, that because it wasn't mentioned and it wasn't explored at all, but I thought about it too. Lois is positioned there all seductive, and Jimmy, of course, is in Lois's dress.
Mm-hmm.
Like this, there's an undertone here that this device they have, it could be used for really, really majorly bad purposes, because they undress Lois.
That's a good point.
And they undress Jimmy. You know? And the other thing is, Lois is wearing lingerie. And I'm willing to bet she was not wearing that under the dress.
Right, so they would have had to undress her completely.
Yeah, there's this nasty undertone of, like, this is not a good device to have, because you could do anything to anyone that you've frozen. And, like, I thought that when I was watching it and she's there in the lingerie, I'm like, she's wearing lingerie. That's not even just, like, you know, like, normal undergarments, you know? It's like, that's something that you get at Victoria's Secret. And I'm like, what the hell? They had to actually undress her.
Yes.
It's not something they're going to explore in this type of show. But I'm just saying, he pointed it out in the email, and I was like, that's right, because I thought about that when it happened. I was like, that's weird.
Yeah, and it's really not the kind of show that would go into, like, suddenly Lois is like, oh my god, was I violated?
Exactly.
Too
they
heavy
play
a
it for
theme.
comical. Yeah, they play for the comical effect.
This isn't, special victims unit or anything like that.
Right.
But yeah, you're right. That's... That's all I can say about that.
Exactly. Anyway.
Yeah. Anyway, so Lois is lured into being captured again. She gets a call about going to meet with the president's secretary or something at a hotel. And of course it's Griffin.
Yes.
So Lois is captured again. Superman shows up, the freeze gun in his eyes, but it works this time. And he just gets pushed off the building. I actually thought this was kind of cool. Like, as soon as he pushed him off the building, I'm like, well, he's Superman. But then they actually show him sort of like crashing down through that cut and everything like that. And I'm just like, that's kind of interesting. Even when he was sort of like pushing him before he actually tossed him over the edge, he sort of rocked him back and forward, and it sounded like something metal rocking backwards and forwards.
It was a good effect.
And then he throws Lois off the building. But of course, Superman comes to pretty quickly and saves her.
This is one of those comic book things where you save the person falling, but technically, if he caught her while she was falling like that, her back would be broken. She'd be, because he just like gets up immediately and boom, catches her. There's no accounting for the, the velocity and all that. I'm being very geeky today. I'm being very comic book geeky.
She's only like 6 foot from the ground when he catches
I know.
her, so...
I'm being very comic book man from The Simpsons. Well, if he captured her, he would be dead. That type of thing.
Is your name really Scott or James Cameron? Okay, so they figure that the prankster must be wearing some sort of contact lenses or something.
Yeah.
So they go to see this doctor. Now, have we seen this guy before?
Yeah, he's the guy from the This Old Gang of Mine that made the mobsters. Remember, he had the technology.
Okay. Because I was looking at him and I'm just like, I don't know, maybe his face just completely popped out of my head or something. But
no, that's Professor Hamilton. Like I said, and back then we talked about him being from the comics and everything, being an advisor to Superman. So yeah, he's fulfilling that role here.
Right. Because that's what I feel. I'm watching it. I'm like, he looks familiar, but I couldn't quite remember which episode from. He had a pretty good scene there though, when he was talking about the occipital lobe, and he's just like occipital. I liked it.
I do know that he does not. does not continue with the series. I think there's a different Doctor in season 3, or maybe it's season 4, that I remember more than I remember this guy. I forget who the actor is, but he's someone that I've seen in other bit parts as well, and he becomes the new advisor at Star Labs in the next season, I believe.
Right.
So we won't see Hamilton for too much longer.
Okay, so Griffin is able to sort of make his larger scale device, freeze everybody out on the streets to go and kidnap the president. But of course, Superman, he's got the contacts and everything, and he's onto it and saves the day.
Yep.
I don't know how I feel about this ending.
It was all right. I mean, it's I've just gotten used to it. It's a very quick ending. It ties itself up into a bow real quick, the way we always do here on Lois and Clark. And it's fine. I mean, I don't mind it. I thought it was neat that they tried to prank him back, turn the tables on him. I thought it was a neat way to do it. It wasn't just like, oh, he comes and just captures him, because he can do it. They sort of pulled a little prank on him because Lois wasn't frozen at the end, even though they thought she was. It was part of the ruse, part of the joke.
Yeah, there's the whole thing too where Griffin says to Victor, you know what? I'm going to let you have her. And stuff like talking about her like she's an object. And that whole time I'm like, Lois isn't frozen, so she must be just fuming inside being talked about like an object this way.
Right.
And then, when she pulls his pants down and all that stuff. When they open the door and find Superman there, it was very cartoony the way they sort of jumped back and went, Superman!
Yeah, it was very old school cartoon, Super Friends or something like that. Yeah, it was.
And we're going to give the dad one last thing to say as well. So we cut to him just sitting in the van doing nothing, yelling, exactly. I should have had a daughter. And I was just like,
Exactly.
I mean, it was fun. I like the prankster, Bronson Pinchot. I find him funny. So for that, it was good. By the end, I was just a bit like, all right, this is played out.
I don't think the prankster comes back again, so I think we're finished with the prankster. We've gotten our fill of the prankster.
All right, well, let's check out the bylines.
So this first one here, this was actually a tie for me. I was going to say this for the my introduction, and then at the last second, I was like, the to be continued just got me so much. I was like, I had to focus on that. So there were some good lines in here between Victor and the prankster that were just amusing. They were funny. And this one, you sound like a pervert at a magazine stand. I was like, that's just funny. Just, that's how I was going to introduce myself this episode. I'm Cory, and I'm a pervert at a magazine stand. So it was funny. And then there was the scene where the prankster's reading from the computer. And I don't know if this was scripted or not, but Victor is right next to him, and he's breathing so heavily, through his nose.
Oh, yeah, it's got the whistle. Yeah.
His nose is wheezing. I was like, that's perfect. That's really, really good.
It was just the way he sort of just turns and stares at him.
I know, yeah. They've got a good interaction together. I mean, it's very campy, this episode, but I like the two of them together.
Yeah, I agree. And I did like the reference to Lois's book as well. She's still writing her book on her computer at work.
Yes. Now, I know that novel is going to come into play in the future.
Nice.
So it's going to have a callback, so be ready.
Okay, so what about Mr. Kerrigan from the Secret Service?
Ugh. This guy.
So weird.
Oh my God, it's crazy. And there's stuff about this in the back issues, so I won't say too much about it. But yeah, it was a weird character, very strange. It's the way he played him and everything, and I cannot believe that would be an actual Secret Service guy. It's so off the wall.
Yeah. Okay, this whole thing about Lois can't stay at home, and so she needs somewhere to stay, but she doesn't want to stay with Clark because they're sort of dating. So she goes to stay with Jimmy, and Jimmy just starts freaking out over nothing really. She turned off the TV. And he also says at one point he's never had anyone sleep over before. So I'm like, okay, so things are going real well with Angela.
True, that's right. I hadn't thought of that.
And then he wants to get his own back on her for annoying him so much. So he's just like, revenge. But then he kind of feels bad about it, so he almost tries to stop it. But his revenge is putting some snakes in her drawer.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's terrible.
I know. That's a little kid revenge right there.
She called the police on you, dude. Come on.
Exactly. It's okay. It's Jimmy,
But yeah, I don't know. The whole thing, I was just like, it's weird. Just like the Secret Service guy. I'm just like, what is all this stuff? This is just filler.
Yeah. I think maybe it's an attempt to sort of get a little more color from the the side characters, you know, like we had in the first season, because we haven't had that a lot in the second season. So it's just a little more, you know, give Jimmy something to do and flesh him out a little bit more. So he's, you know, he's a little silly. He's a little immature, you know. I don't know.
And they're playing that up with Jimmy now. You know, it's really more like, this is a kid, you know. It's not like he was like a young man who was on the rise like the first season. No, Jimmy's still a kid, and he's got a lot of maturing to do.
Exactly. Yeah. Like when his friends come, like he says, my friends come over, they don't have any place to go, so we hang out there all night. Very, very immature type character now.
Okay, so Bobby Big Mouth is back. Again.
Yep.
Always happy to see him, I guess.
Yeah. Not much to say. He didn't really add too much to the episode.
Yeah, I just wonder how many more times he's going to show up. If this is just going to be a recurring thing. Let's go and see Bobby Big Mouth. He's always scoffing something in his face.
Right.
So, yeah, all in all, I mean, I wouldn't say this episode was meh. I would just say it was good, but could have been better, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's get into the quote vote.
Okay.
What's everybody standing around for? This is a newspaper, not happy hour at Buckingham Palace. What are we here, the Daily Planet? Or second stringers from the Weehawken Gazette? Am I making myself perfectly clear?
Fair few votes this week. I'm happy. Everyone's coming back and they're voting.
Awesome.
I love it.
Great.
So we've got a winner, so let's get into it. Cue the music.
Christopher Walken walks into Sean Connery's office.
I need a new partner.
I knew it. One bad day, there goes my whole newsroom. Why don't you just shoot me now? Send me up to Elvis.
Sean?
No, Christopher, don't say it. You know, I've stood on the sidelines, hoping against hope that Mother Nature would smile on you two, that the bluebird of happiness would come and land on your shoulder, that four-leaf clovers would sprout up wherever you walk, and all the time my gut is singing a different aria.
Sean?
Christopher, anyone with half a hemisphere can see that you two are gasoline and fire, TNT and matches, two trains headed toward each other.
Sean! Thank you. The problem is, we didn't have a bad day.
No.
It was a really great date, and now I'm completely panicked, and I have no idea what to do next.
Oh, darling. Come here, honey. Yay!
And
scene. Where'd Kermit come from? What?
Get out of here. Okay, good times. So let's get into our second episode discussion today. And the episode is titled Lucky Leon, written by Chris Rupenthal and directed by Jim Pohl, a couple of newcomers to Lois and Clark. I don't think we've seen these guys before.
Mm-hmm.
And this originally aired on March 12th of 1995.
At 11:25, Jimmy was let into the house to deliver a desk friend to Mr. Borges. 15 minutes later, the housekeeper found Borges dead. Jimmy was the last one to see him alive.
Well, that's not proof of anything.
This morning, bail was set at $150,000.
Jimmy doesn't have that kind of money, even if he only needs 10% to make bail.
Chief.
Lois, just hold your horses. I'm already across that stream. I sent a personal check down by messenger to Scooter Haynes.
The bail bondsman?
Well, he prefers to be called a freedom facilitator. He'll have Jimmy out of there before you can say false arrest.
I don't mean to be rude, but I've got to run. Got another case I'm working on. Just let Jimmy know he's still a suspect. Clark, I was wondering if you're free tonight. I have some tickets to a play.
Well, that's,
Such an unfortunate case of bad timing. Clark's busy tonight. He and I have plans.
Maybe some other time then.
When Jimmy is placed under arrest for the murder of a man he made a delivery to while working his second job, Lois and Clark attempt to clear his name. The man Jimmy works for, Lucky Leon, is not just a man who made it good selling gadgets that help you stay organized and clean, but a former criminal who worked for the KGB, specializing in weapons that look like harmless everyday objects. Indeed, it turns out his gadget, called the Desk Friend, is secretly a camera and audio eavesdropper with the ability to shoot poison-filled darts. Lois and Clark eventually find an evening where they can finally have their long-awaited date, and it goes spectacularly spectacularly well until Lois inexplicably slams the door in his face at the end of the evening. Things don't go so well the next day between them either when Mason shows up to deliver more news on Lucky Leon's shady dealings and then proceeds to grab Clark for lunch. Unfortunately for her, though, Clark can't reciprocate her feelings of affection and love because he is too hung up on Lois. Jimmy ends up having his life threatened when his car's brakes are rendered useless via remote control, giving them yet another link to Lucky Leon. Combined with a tip from a friend, Jimmy and Lois learn of a secret Lucky Leon shipment, even though there was nothing scheduled. A ruse by Leon and pals plants Lois and Jimmy with false information that they pass on to Superman, who accidentally ends up stealing nuclear weapons and delivering them into the hands of Intergang, who Lucky Leon works for. When the trick is revealed, Jimmy comes up with an idea for where to find the criminals. Going to Leon's original factory, Jimmy, Lois, and Clark are captured and tied up, but before they can be shot, Clark uses his heat vision to activate one of the warheads, causing the people to flee the place, leaving Clark to break the chains and get Lois and Jimmy to safety, and quickly switching to Superman to grab the weapon and kick it into space, saving the day. As Lois and Clark finally have a moment to relax and talk, they share a passionate kiss, which is interrupted by the sound of a bomb ticking. Clark races towards a car nearby, only to arrive too late as Mason's car explodes. He rushes to her side, and as she sees his partially exposed uniform under his shirt, whispers the word resurrection and dies.
I still got 30 seconds. 8 o'clock on the dot.
Would you like more time?
Do I need it?
No, absolutely not. You look great.
I know you said burgundy, but I thought, why be a slave to expectations? That's a charcoal suit, isn't it? You know, I could change. I got a lot of really cute things in burgundy, and I'll be ready before...
Lois, no. I like what you're wearing. You look fantastic.
Really?
Let's just go.
Okay. Let me just get my purse.
Okay, so a fair bit in the investigation. Thank you, iReactions.
Yeah, so when Lois is getting ready for her date, she tries on one dress and she says, "I can't wear this. Jimmy wore it," referring to the last episode that we saw.
As soon as she had it on, I was like, "Isn't that the dress that Jimmy was wearing?"
Exactly. In the script, Mason isn't supposed to yell, "Stop the presses." She's supposed to just like say it casually as she walks up to Clark and Lois, like, "Hey, stop the presses," you know, that type of thing. When Mason, she says to Clark, "Well, that was enthusiastic," you know, when she says that I like you, and he's like, "Well, I like you too," you know. She was supposed to, now this is weird. She was supposed to add to that, you know, that was enthusiastic. And she's like, "Anyway, I just want to know what's going on. You do, you don't, my sister, my daughter." What? Apparently, this was a quote, and it says it in the actual script. This is a quote from the movie Chinatown. Which, have you ever seen that movie?
I have. I don't remember that line, though.
Yeah, I had to look it up because I've not seen this movie. And I was like, that's just a weird quote to put in there. And so I looked it up, and I found it on YouTube. And it's, you know, Jack Nicholson and Faye Dunaway. And he's, like, playing this cop or, you know, investigator. And he's talking to her, asking her what's going on. And she answers, you know, something about how her sister is also her daughter. And, you know, it was a scene where Jack Nicholson actually smacks her like 2 or 3 times. And I'm like, holy cow. And yeah, it's part of that movie there where she reveals that, you know, I guess her and her father, there was a incest going on, and that's why the sister is the daughter. It's a weird thing to reference in a Lois and Clark script.
I guess it would have made it a lot more awkward between the two of them.
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, I just watched that one clip from it, and I was feeling awkward just watching that one clip. I'm like, holy crap.
I remember that scene, but yeah. That reference would have been lost on me. Really.
Oh yeah, and I was just surprised. I have not seen Jack Nicholson in anything where he wasn't being Jack Nicholson, you know, like his usual, you know, like, well, you know, guys, that type of, you know, how he is, you know. This was odd to see him like actually playing like a normal role where he's like not himself. Like I just haven't seen a lot of Jack Nicholson stuff from his early days. I know him just from modern, you know, the modern era. But yeah, it was to see him like smacking Faye Dunaway like 2 or 3 times, like hard too. I was like, holy crap. I don't think this would fly in today's world. Yeah. So yeah, it was a weird reference to put in there, and it's especially weird. Like, you know how they say if you have to explain the joke, it's not a good joke. Well, in the script, they had to explain that was a quote from the movie Chinatown. If you have to explain it, it's not a good line.
Yeah, that's probably why they looked at it and went, yeah, let's just cut that.
Yeah, exactly. We don't need this. And we don't need to reference incest. So let's not go there. In the script, I guess Clark was supposed to be much closer to Mason's car when it explodes. And the explosion knocks him back, and that's what burns off the front of his shirt or opens his shirt up, revealing the uniform, the Superman uniform underneath. So that makes sense to me, and it says that like the dying Mason traces the S with a blood-soaked finger, then she dies and Lois runs up. And Clark is supposed to wrap his coat around himself to hide the uniform, and he begins to cry, as does Lois. iReaction said, I think this was probably changed due to a safety concern, being so close to an explosion, and at the same time, crying on command was not something that Dean Cain could probably do at this point. So that's why they probably changed it. But I like that the explosion would have revealed his costume underneath. Whereas in the aired version, it somehow comes loose, I guess, when he's pulling her out of the car, and then she sees it and opens it up further, I guess. It was a little awkward to me.
Not to mention that he doesn't do anything to hide it, so Lois is like right there as well. The staging of it is a little off.
It's the biggest story of the year, and some by-the-book colonel wants me to sit on it because of some stupid little detail like national security.
You step out on the field, Lois, you're gonna get hit.
Now I know what you boys were doing in 6th grade when the girls had to go to the auditorium for the hygiene lecture. You were learning sports metaphors.
Lois, hush.
At least we know the Army caught the terrorists and got the warheads back, which means we've got Lucky Leon, and you are as good as cleared.
I will read a brief statement. At 1:17 this afternoon, a secret shipment of nuclear warheads destined for dismantling was hijacked by Superman and turned over to terrorists masquerading as U.S. soldiers.
No!
By command of the President and Executive Action Order number 3708, the combined forces of the United States are ordered to and will be solely dedicated to ending this threat and bringing Superman to justice.
Okay, so let's get into the main story here, and our lead, Jimmy in jeopardy. Jimmy's making extra money delivering these desk friends. And nice. We see this guy that he delivers it to. His name's Raul. He's talking about some travel routes or something on the phone, and his desk friend is bugged. And we see these two guys that turn out to be Lucky Leon and his henchman Gregor. Do you know either of these guys who play Lucky Leon and Gregor?
The guy who plays Lucky Leon, I've seen him before, but I don't know exactly who he is. I didn't look him up or anything, but I know I've seen him in other bit parts here and there.
Yeah, I knew I'd seen him somewhere. I do know his name's John Capellos, but I cannot pin down where I've seen him before. But the guy who plays Gregor is Mark Rolston, and he was in Shawshank Redemption.
Oh, I saw that. I saw it so long ago. I don't even remember. I saw it in the theater. I don't even remember, though.
But he's got, the tiniest of bit parts here. I'm not sure his character even says anything.
Oh, okay.
So, Lois and Clark, they try to make some date plans. We're still going with this whole thing. They're gonna have a date. But this time they're interrupted because Jimmy gets arrested for this guy's murder because the desk friend shoots a poison dart or something out that retracts.
Yeah.
It's a very strange ploy.
Mm-hmm.
And of course it brings Mason back into the story because she's, I guess, trying the case against Jimmy. And we get this whole thing because Perry and the Daily Planet post his bail. And he's talking about Jimmy like he's a son, he's... They talk about this whole thing about how men can't convey their feelings and use sports metaphors, right?
Right, throughout the whole episode.
Yeah, so I don't know. Is this development for the Jimmy character and the Perry character at all? What do you think?
Well, I guess it sort of develops their relationship because before, obviously Perry looked towards Jimmy as sort of like a protege, I guess. He's sort of trying to take him under his wing, even in the first season with the different actor and everything. Still, I think this is trying to maybe bring them closer together.
Yeah, I just thought it was interesting that they used Jimmy as the base for this one, because I did look ahead, and I can't remember what the episode's about, but we've got an episode coming up called Target Jimmy Olsen.
Oh, yes.
It's kind of like what's happening here. Like, Jimmy is the target. He's been set up, and he's being arrested and all this sort of stuff, so...
I'm pretty sure I remember that episode that's coming up, and it's not really... I know he's not tried for murder in that one. That one, I think, if I remember correctly, unless I'm getting mixed up with like a later episode, it has to do with Jimmy's actual father coming into town.
Oh, okay.
And him being involved in like the FBI or CIA or something like that, some kind of spy thing.
So I guess we should be happy that they're kind of involving outside characters. I mean, we were saying like it seemed like they'd gone on the wayside a bit, so I guess it's kind of good that they're bringing them in.
The thing that I was confused about, at first I'm watching it and I was trying to figure this out, and then I think I figured it out by the end of the episode, but then I was like, wait, was that really what it was doing? Like, I didn't understand why Jimmy was so important to the bad guys. They didn't mean to frame him. They just needed someone to deliver the desk friend so that it would do what it had to do. But then, like, they go through some great lengths to try to kill him. And I was like, why are they trying to kill him? He's already on trial. I didn't get why they were trying to kill him.
Yeah, I did kind of get the impression like Jimmy was supposed to be the patsy the whole time. Like, it's not just he was the one who delivered it and now he's on trial, so that's good for us. Let's try to frame him now. Right. I think he was like intentionally set up.
Maybe if they didn't kill him, maybe then it would come out like in a trial that he was working for them, and then they would have to investigate the actual business of Lucky Leon, and it would, yeah, maybe that's why.
Yeah, and they try to like tie all this gadget stuff together.
Yeah, they really, yeah.
Because Lucky Leon he runs like infomercials and stuff to sell gadgets, and he's got the desk friend and the bath friend and the golf friend.
Yes.
And they all do their various things. But they try to kill Jimmy by remotely controlling his car so it will crash. Yep. And it's a whole funny thing too, where Superman sort of comes to save him.
Right.
But rather than stopping the car, he sort of just sits in there and goes, well, how about you just turn the engine off? Problem solved, Jimmy.
Right. There were some people in the back issues who were like, why didn't Jimmy think of that? You know, and it's like, well, he's probably pretty frazzled that the brakes aren't working and freaking out, so he's not thinking clearly.
It turns out that Lucky Leon is working for Intergang. Of course, naturally.
Yes.
And they sort of get some information that, like, he sort of worked his way up to being a bigwig in sales or something.
Yes.
And for some reason now he's joined Intergang and he's going to take out Superman. But we get Mr. Darryl back. It's like Leon's just, like, playing with him or something. Like, it's just like, he's going to do what Intergang wants, but he's not going to do it the way they want him to do it.
Right.
It's a weird character.
I just think it's weird that he thinks he could take on Superman. Like, all these people, you know, that think they can take down Superman, like, clearly are not paying attention to what's going on in Metropolis. Because if they did, they'd be like, we can't defeat this guy, you know? There's like, unless we have some major kryptonite here, and even then, it's still not a sure thing.
Yeah, and I don't see how he thinks he's going to take down Superman by having hidden cameras and stuff everywhere.
Right.
Because he sends Lois and Clark desk friends and bath friends.
Yeah.
Why does he want to eavesdrop on what they're saying?
Right.
Mason comes back into it, of course, because she's doing this trial with Jimmy.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, it kind of felt like she was sandwiched in there because Lois and Clark were setting up their first date.
Yes.
You know, they're going to have their first date, and it's going to go really well, but then Lois is going to freak out about the whole thing because it was like too good.
Yeah, it's a weird, like, we'll talk about Mason in the bylines, but yeah, it did feel a bit, her part felt a bit strange.
I did find it funny though when she walked in and yelled, "Stop the presses!" It just seemed really random too.
Oh yeah,
it just seemed like intercut. Like she didn't come in and go, "Oh hey, Lois Clark, how you doing?" She just walked up to them, and the next thing she's just yelled, "Stop the presses!" And you're like, "Oh, where'd she come from?"
Exactly. Well, even the people in the background stopped and stared at her like, "What the hell?" It was good. It was a good little scene.
So Mason tells them about that guy, Raoul, being poisoned. While she's there, of course, she asks Clark out to lunch.
Yeah.
And Lois pretends that she's totally cool with that. Like, Clark should just go for that.
Right.
So Leon was former KGB, and Raoul used to be a bigwig drug dealer, turned informant for the CIA. I don't know. It's like this whole thing about, like, he was KGB, and now he's with Intergang, and he was tied in with Raoul, the drug dealer and stuff. And he's like, what's this got to do with anything? Right?
I think it's just establishing that he's not just Lucky Leon goofball. Like, he's actually a dangerous guy, you know, like his gadgets, that he's a smart guy, you know, because someone who's dumb, you know, and a goofy just salesman wouldn't be able to make all these, you know, gadgets. You know, so it's just, I guess, trying to heighten the danger for his character.
Yeah, but he thinks it's a great idea to trick Superman into hijacking a weapons truck for him.
Right, right.
As if to say, like, once Superman figured out what he's been, you know, tricked into,
Right.
like, he wouldn't come after them.
Well, yeah.
Which immediately he does.
When he got tricked, I was like, actually, I didn't mind that. I thought that was good because he actually got them to do the work for him. And he couldn't just find them right away. It did take a little bit for him to actually find him. So I thought that was actually better than just like the normal, you know, try to get away with a crime and you know, like have Lois as a distraction and then escape. You know, it's like it's better than that, like what the prankster did. It's better than that tried and true method.
I know, it's kind of like what you were saying about like how Superman should be able to fix all this in 5 minutes.
Oh yeah, yeah.
But instead of like Superman going and getting the warhead back, which he could have done,
right?
Instead, Lois, Clark, and Jimmy rock up at Leon's old factory, and Clark has to activate the warhead.
Yeah.
In order to get everybody to run away.
I mean, you got to imagine there was probably another way to get out of that situation other than activating it.
Yeah, and it does make for a good thing too, because they're trying to hightail it out of there.
Right.
And Clark has to, of course, disappear so he can become Superman.
Well, I mean, like, start a fire or something with your heat vision, you know? That would
true.
have done it too. You know, you don't have to activate a nuclear warhead.
But Lois runs back into the factory because she can't find Clark. And it sort of, I guess, builds that a little bit. And then, of course, to see Superman being like, I can't deactivate this, I'll just kick it into space.
That whole thing right there, because, like, Clark and Jimmy and Lois, he's like, get to the car. And they start running, but then he zooms off and becomes Superman. And she turns around and Clark is gone. It's like, what? You know, like, she got to be thinking of something right there. It's like, where did he go? You know? And their explanation later was really kind of ridiculous. You know? Like,
yeah.
He found Clark wandering down the road a half mile. Like, I guess I got mixed up. You know?
Not to mention that this is like the umpteenth time that they've been like tied up or chained up or something.
Right.
And Clark has just gotten out.
Right.
How often can you say, like, I picked the lock, or the chain is rusted, or the rope was frayed?
Right.
It seemed like he didn't even bother to try to explain it this time. It was just like, everybody's gone, nobody's looking, snap, I'm out, let's go. So Lois is confused about, where Clark went and everything. Superman, he actually does manage to take care of something in just a few seconds. He goes and picks up Mr. Daryl and Leon, captures them, just like that.
Kind of a quick ending for the Daryl character, considering it's Robert Culp. You figured it'd be a little bit more into it. You know, like we were talking about the other guy, the Peter Boyle, who was in charge of the whole thing in that first episode. I had memories that he was involved a lot more than he was, but apparently he's only going to show up in one more episode.
For real?
Yeah, because watching this, I was like, all right, we got Robert Culp again. I was like, I got to find out. Like, when does Peter Boyle come back into the thing? And I looked up on IMDb, and he's 2 episodes. The one we saw and another one that's coming up. I think it's he's actually in the first episode of the 3rd season is what it was.
Yeah, and you were saying this too about we've barely seen anything to do with the inner workings of Intergang.
Exactly.
So we're getting close to the end of the season now. Are they getting ready to wrap this storyline up so they can start a fresh story in season 3 or what?
So yeah, I didn't know, I didn't think Intergang lasted more than the 2nd season, but apparently it must, I guess, if he's going to appear in the first episode of the next season, I guess so.
Okay. It all does come to an end. Lois and Clark are walking outside and they're going to go and see Mason.
Right.
But they stop and they have a bit of a moment.
It was a good moment.
Kiss.
Yeah, this is a good kiss too.
Yeah, but it's like we were saying in the investigation, the staging of this is really weird.
Right.
Because they're kissing and Lois is totally into it, but then Clark hears the bomb ticking and he just runs for Mason's car.
Right.
Which seems like it's up the block and around the corner. And doesn't get there in time to save her. And Lois makes no mention of, hey, we were in the middle of a passionate kiss.
Right.
And you just ran away.
Yeah.
No thought of how did you know something was happening?
Right.
Why did you run up to Mason like that? How did you know?
Right.
I hope we're going to get into that in the next episode.
Yeah,
I hope
I'm
she
sure.
questions him about this.
Yeah, I'm sure this is the shock you know, of seeing like the explosion and seeing that Mason is apparently dead at this point is like, oh, well, everything else gets forgotten at this moment, you know, because of this. We'll see in the next episode if that comes about.
Yes, the elusive resurrection, whatever this may mean.
Yes.
So, yes. I'm trying to remember if this ties back into this episode at all, because I kind of get a feeling it doesn't.
Right.
Like it's a whole separate thing, because she was actually saying a lot of stuff throughout the episode about like, I can't wait on Lois and Clark. I've got like all this other stuff going on in my
right.
Like I've got other people to meet and stuff. So I have a feeling this is its own separate story.
I don't remember.
But we'll find out next week.
Yes.
I guess. Some bylines for this episode. Lois and Clark sharing Perry's last donut. I thought that was kind of funny.
Yeah.
Where Perry comes out yelling at him.
Amusing.
Mason awkwardly asking out Clark. Very awkward.
Now, speaking of Mason, as long as we're talking about her, that was just, I don't know. Like I said, her part was weird in this episode. And I know she's like she said in the episode, she's throwing herself at Clark, you know, and he's just not into her because obviously he's into Lois. I just wish he would come out and say it to her. Like say, you know, I appreciate it, but because he's really like, he leads her on. He really does lead her on. I know maybe he's just trying to be the nice guy and not like let her down like harshly, but he needs to just be like, just say it. You know, just say it like a Band-Aid, rip it off real quick, and just tell her, you know, I'm not into this, you know, like, I'm sorry, you're, you know, great and everything, but I kind of, you know, I'd like to explore what's going to happen with Lois, you know?
Yeah.
But the thing that bugs me is at the end of that little scene where he rushes off and she's like, I love you. I'm like, whatever. What do you love him?
Yeah.
I know it's been one season that you've been on. It's been like half a season so far, maybe a little more than half a season. You know, we don't really know how much actual time in Lois and Clark land that is, you know, but I assume it's probably like a couple months. You've not really been out on a date with him. You don't really know him that well. You just know some very basic things about him. You don't love him. It's just a little drama for me. I was like, oh, come on, really?
Yeah, and well, I don't think it's all on Clark, really. I mean, she did get annoyed with him that one time and say, look, I'm not going to ask you out again, but maybe if you want to ask me out, then I'll probably say yes. And he didn't ask her out.
Right, exactly.
Can you take a clue, girl?
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
True.
But I guess we shouldn't speak ill of the dead.
Yes.
Rest in peace, Mason.
Yes, rest in peace.
Sorry to see you go.
Unless she's going to be resurrected.
Ooh, maybe.
Zombie Mason.
Okay, so what about Lois taking a swing with the girlfriend?
Yeah, that was pretty good. I like that. The girlfriend was funny because it was so mean. And he's like, I must get better voice for this. Nicer voice needed.
Yeah, I thought that was good. It gives you like all this inspirational stuff and it tells you when you suck and all this. But when Lois swings at it, just goes, whoa, who let Greg Norman in here?
Speaking of Lucky Leon there, I was surprised that for the quote vote you didn't choose your Russian voice, considering we have the Ukraine guys in here. So.
Damn. Should've, could've, would've. All right, so Lois and Clark discuss expectations, and Lois freaks out when Clark mentions the burgundy for her clothing choice. I thought this was interesting. You know, it's just sort of setting up that whole manic nature of Lois when it comes to dating.
Exactly, yeah.
The fact that she decides not to wear burgundy, but Clark wears the charcoal suit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was pretty funny. It was a good scene, and the whole Clark dressing montage was kind of fun as well.
It was kind of I think maybe kind of an homage to like classic Superman, where he would jump in the phone booth and spin around and be changed.
Right. Now the music, I was trying to figure out where the music came from. And like I know this is a whole Mask reference, especially with the whole. I didn't like the whole smoking.
Oh, the smoking, yeah, and then running off.
Yeah, like he does like the over exaggerated like cartoon runoff. I was like, yeah, we don't really need that.
Yeah.
But the music itself, is that actual music from the Mask?
It could be. It's like a samba or a salsa. Or
something like that. And I tried to use was it Soundhound or not Sound? Yeah, Soundhound to like identify the music playing in the background, but it couldn't find a match for it. So I don't know. I don't know where it came from, but yeah, I was wondering if that's if they actually used that song in the Mask.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to find that one out. If anybody out there knows,
let us know.
Lois asks Perry for a new partner after the bad date.
Right.
And we did it in our quote vote. I love Perry's reaction to it.
It's been a while since we've had an extended Perry freakout, you know? So it was good to see.
Yeah, just as soon as she comes in and asks for it, he's just like, oh, I knew it. Always great to have a good Perry freakout, I guess. All right, so yeah, all in all, I was quite so-so on this episode.
Yeah, it wasn't too bad. I mean, I think what it sets up is more important than what the episode itself was about. You know, like Lois and Clark have finally, they finally had their first date, like they actually did kiss. Whereas before it's always been close, or they've always tried to set up the date and never really had it. So they've made some progress in the relationship aspect of it, which is good because it's always been on hold for this whole season pretty much. So it's good to have that progress.
Yeah, I can agree with that. Like, the focus was a bit here and there, really.
Yeah.
So it kind of just sort of made it for a so-so. But yeah, I guess I do like the fact that their relationship has moved forward.
I mean, I'm sure for the shippers, at this episode, they were like, oh, finally, finally we're getting some movement, and they're not just like flirting around with the idea and then taking it away again. Like this is where they hoped it would have gone, like in the first season, I think.
Well, I guess we got a big decision to make. Is it Loark or Clois?
I have to go with Clois. That just sounds better.
Lois, I don't really know exactly how to say this, but why did you come back to me tonight in the factory? I mean, you were running back into an atomic explosion.
I know. It doesn't make too much sense, does it? Guess I just couldn't leave you there.
You slammed the door in my face last night.
That was a mistake.
Don't let it happen again.
I guess we'll just have to see how things go, won't we?
Fortunately, there's no doors here tonight.
Fortunately.
Yeah, if Clark and Lois show up, tell them I got tired of waiting. They're not the only case I'm working on.
Well, let's get into some back issues.
All right, so for this episode, there wasn't a whole lot about this episode, but they did talk about, there was an article, I guess, at the time that this aired, in TV Guide that was talking about canceled TV shows, or shows that might be canceled, and Lois and Clark was on the list for some reason, and people were wondering why, because maybe it's not doing, like, gangbuster numbers, but it's still not a bad show, and they're looking at the listings to see what else would people watch, and they're like, surely not Sequest, Like, a couple of people were not a fan of Sequest, and it can't be Sequest,
Hey, I like Sequest.
And then they're like, and Murder, She Wrote, like the one guy said, I could see that on the USA Network any time of day. They play it like 5 million times.
I'm under 75, and I still like Murder, She Wrote.
So anyway, they were just wondering, why is this on the list? There were one or two posts saying that Lucky Leon rocked. It was a good episode. They loved the Mask tribute, the music and the movements and everything. I thought it was great.
You would in 95.
Yes, exactly. The height of Jim Carrey's, super fame.
Exactly.
They said after the I love you line of Mason, they said, I really just want something good to happen to Mason. She deserves it. I'm like, oh, well, you did not get it, did you? Like, I think they're hoping that she's not really dead, that she's just like passed out or something, that she's going to come back.
She's so dead.
And then finally someone said, well, maybe Resurrection refers to Lex Luthor investigating how he came back to life. And I was like, oh, well, that's not bad. I didn't think that right away, but when I was thinking about the title for the next episode, Resurrection, I had thought, well, maybe that's about Lex Luthor coming back to life.
Right.
I'm like, wait, no, he's already back to life. He's just in prison. That's all.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's not that. But I thought that was interesting, maybe. And then for the prankster, this one was, I don't know, people didn't like this one as much as the first prankster episode, which I think is kind of how we felt. They're saying, you know, the prankster and Victor are doing like a Three Stooges routine. You know, they were waiting for someone to call each other numbskull, you know, and bop them on the head or something. One guy said that the prankster was never threatening enough for his liking. He could be silly, you know, and that's fun, but he never seemed really super threatening, you know. And they said, you know, Bronson Pinchot is trying too hard, not really succeeding at trying to make him threatening, which I can kind of agree with. He did seem kind of like, you know, not totally evil. Even when he pushes Superman off the roof and pushes Lois, it's like, yeah, that's evil, but it just didn't play as evil.
Yeah, the episodes are more just a good bit of fun, really.
Yeah, exactly.
Then they are like, oh my god, that guy is like the worst.
And then there was this poster said that she found him annoying too, you know, the prankster, but he was intelligent and he was evil and he had some good lines in there and expressions, which he did. Like I said, the pervert at the magazine stand. But she said, I like bad guys who aren't Luthor clone types, which is true. You don't want to just have a Luthor clone. You want to have Luthor himself. So that's why she liked this, because it was a different type of bad guy. And then we get into the typical comic book geek argument that if Superman's wearing contacts and he uses his heat vision, aren't the contacts now gone? Wouldn't the heat vision, you know, totally destroy those? You know, and then there was like a whole thing, you know, they go off about, well, perhaps the heat vision can be focused in such a narrow beam that it goes through just a small pinpoint of the contact, and the contact is still fine, and all this technical explanation. In the end, they're like, well, if he did destroy the contacts, he doesn't need them anymore because he just destroyed the machine, so it's fine. Everything's good.
It's funny to think, though, like, say he had the contact lenses in, used his heat vision, and they, like, melted or something.
Yes.
Just to see Superman being like, my eyes.
That's right.
Why did I do that?
Exactly. That hurts. That's going to leave a mark. And they said that the thing that bothered them more was that everyone seemed to get hit by the Flash, even if you weren't looking directly at the Flash. So, yeah, I thought about that too after I read that. It's like, that makes sense because it's like they weren't looking at the device, but it still affected them for some reason. And then finally we have that agent that we talked about, and doing a mix of like Clint Eastwood and Kevin Costner in The Bodyguard, which that makes sense too. I didn't think about that until I read what they said about it. The scene in there where he's talking about the shooting is supposed to be representative of the Ronald Reagan shooting back in the day, and they said just it's bad, terrible acting. It's supposed to be funny, but fails.
I also now have a sudden urge to sing.
No.
I won't do it. I won't do it.
We want the listeners to come back, so that's
true. You're the singer here.
Yeah.
I'll leave that to you.
There you go.
All right. So our next issue, we will be discussing the aptly named Resurrection.
Yes.
And after that, Tempest Fugitive.
Yes.
Now, I think we both agree that we kind of don't really remember what this Resurrection storyline is.
Right.
I don't know. Maybe it has something to do with Luthor. I hope. Could tie back to the reason why he is, alive and well.
Yes.
But Tempest Fugitive. I remember this.
Yes, I remember this as well.
This is H.G. Wells, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Yes. And I remember the character of Tempest as well, because I think he shows up a fair bit as the series goes along.
Yes, he does. Yeah, I was thinking that too. I was like, I know he is there for more than just one episode.
But we'll talk about him next week.
Yeah, because I've been looking forward to this, because I like the character of Tempest. At least I remember liking the character of Tempest. Now, going back with a critical eye, as we find sometimes we don't like the things we did back then. So
it's the joy of the rewatch.
Yes, we will find out about that next week, because that's it for this issue of the Rewatch Podcast. Keep up with listener interaction by liking our Facebook page at facebook.com/Rewatch Podcast or facebook.com/Lois and Clark Rewatch. Don't forget to follow the show on Twitter at Rewatch Pod, or visit our webpage at rewatchpodcast.podomatic.com, which has some links to our favorite sites there, such as zoomway.net, the folc.wiki.com, and the Superman homepage. And of course, don't forget, there's links to our archive of film rewatch episodes as well.
And as I've been mentioning the last few weeks, we're probably going to be moving away from Podomatic soon, as soon as I find some time to actually get all our stuff uploaded back up.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. But I'll get there. But and hopefully our entire main feed will be restored with all the old episodes back catalogue for everybody to enjoy. And remember, you can always write us an email or record a voice message and send it over to the therewatchpodcast@gmail.com. And also, if you've enjoyed the show, please consider giving us a rate and review on iTunes. And you can also help support the Rewatch Podcast by heading over to patreon.com/rewatchpodcast and making a monthly contribution as little as $1. And of course, we're also up on YouTube, so search Rewatch Podcast and subscribe. Okay, thank you for joining me again, Tom.
Mm-hmm.
And I will just say, until next time, it feels like the bottom of the ninth with 2 outs and 2 strikes against you, but I'm going to man a full court press and I won't stop till it's game, set, match, rewatch.
We gotta fly.
The Rewatch Podcast is not associated with Warner Brothers Television, ABC, Gangbuster Films Incorporated, or Round Delay Productions.
Don't believe everything you see on TV.
The use of any and all copyrighted material is only for parody, news analysis, critique, or educational purposes as provided in United States Code Title 17, aka Fair Use.
Let's get legal on this.
Music provided by Kevin McCloud at incompetech.com.
Great shades of Elvis.
Copyright 2016, The Rewatch Podcast.
Where are your beepers? We'll be in touch.
Hi, Rewatch Podcast listeners. I'm Corey.
I'm Tom.
And I'm Nathan.
First off, let me say that we have all had a blast doing the Rewatch Podcast. Every week, we put out another episode for free for you. And although we enjoy these discussions with each other, we truly do this for you guys out there in podcast land.
That's right, Corey. But we are here today to tell you about Patreon. Every week, there are costs involved in podcasting about film and television, including hosting and bandwidth charges, our own personal internet usage, and film or show rentals and purchases. So, we're asking you to become a Patreon supporter.
If you can afford as little as $1 to throw our way per month, it would really help us keep the lights on. And if you want to send $100 our way every month, we wouldn't turn that down either. But it's your choice, and we appreciate the support you bring.
As always, we strive to bring you the best quality shows we can create, and we hope that you enjoy them. So head on over to patreon.com/rewatchpodcast to become one of our patrons and show your support for the Rewatch Podcast.
And if we get enough patrons, we may even be able to produce exclusive content just for the supporters in the form of simply getting episodes before the main feed release, or even bonus film discussion episodes as a thank you for your support. The website again is patreon.com/rewatchpodcast.
Thanks, everyone.